precisely 07:45 on the morning of February 21st, 1945, Electrician's mate second class Joseph Kissel crouched deep inside the armored belly of an M4A3 Sherman tank as it crawled forward across the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima. The steel walls vibrated around him. His gloved hands rested on control systems he had personally wired months earlier at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. Every cable, every circuit, every ignition contact inside this machine carried his fingerprints. Kissel was only 24 years old, a Navy Seabee from the 117th Naval Construction Battalion, but he had already invested more than 1,200 hours building this single weapon. He knew exactly why it existed. On Iwo Jima, men carrying portable flamethrowers were dying at an appalling rate. The casualty percentage for those operators was estimated at 92%. Nearly every man who picked one up was wounded or killed before finishing his mission. 200 yards ahead of the Sherman loomed a reinforced Japanese pillbox, its concrete shell fused seamlessly into jagged volcanic rock. Inside waited a Type 92 heavy machine gun, already responsible for the deaths of 11 Marines earlier that morning alone. That bunker had clear, uninterrupted fields of fire across open ground. Every Marine who tried to approach it had paid in blood. On Iwo Jima, warfare followed a brutal logic. Flamethrower operators carried nearly 100 pounds of equipment, yet their weapons held only 7 seconds of fuel. Japanese snipers learned to spot them instantly by the twin fuel tanks on their backs. They were targeted first. Most never made it within effective range. 3 days earlier, on February 19th, the invasion had begun. 70,000 Marines stormed beaches made of black volcanic sand that swallowed boots and slowed every movement. Waiting underground were more than 22,000 Japanese defenders, protected by an elaborate defensive system, 11 miles of tunnels, 750 fortified positions, and countless caves carved into rock harder than steel. Naval bombardment had failed. Artillery rounds shattered on concrete 3 feet thick. Rifle fire was useless against steel doors and reinforced firing slits. Marines were being asked to charge fortresses with weapons that could not reach the enemy. Something had to change. Months earlier in Hawaii, Colonel Unmacht of the Army's Chemical Warfare Service understood this reality. He gathered a classified composite unit of Navy Seabees, Army chemical specialists, and Marine tank crews. Their mission was dangerously simple: take the flamethrower off the Marine's back and put it on armor. Early experiments failed. Light tanks like the M3 Stuart, converted into so-called Satan tanks, lacked the armor and range needed. The solution required a medium tank. For Iwo Jima, Unmacht's team selected 8 M4A3 Shermans. The Seabees, led by machinists mate First Class A.A. Reich and Joseph Kissel, began designing something entirely new. They merged 3 separate flame systems into one. The result was the CBH-1 flamethrower system. Each conversion demanded 150 pounds of welding rod, thousands of electrical connections, and cost nearly $25,000 per tank. The system operated at 300 pounds per square inch, throwing burning fuel up to 400 feet with 270 degrees of traverse. Kissel wired every circuit himself. He tested every connection again and again. He understood the consequences of failure. One broken wire meant Marines dying outside a bunker that should have been destroyed. By November 1944, the 8 tanks were ready. The Marine Corps called them Mark I flame tanks. Official Army paperwork labeled them M4A3R5. Marines simply called them Zippos. They loaded onto transports in early February 1945. Kissel and shipfitter First Class J.T. Patterson were ordered to accompany them. That meant maintenance under fire. If a system failed during combat, no one else knew how to fix it. On February 21st, D+2, the invasion stalled. Infantry assaults failed. Tank guns could not crack hardened defenses. The 4th Marine Division requested a flame tank for a bunker that had held out for 2 days. Kissel climbed into the assistant driver's seat. He had built this weapon. Now it would decide whether Marines lived or died. The Sherman lurched forward at 8 miles per hour, tracks grinding volcanic ash into powder. Inside, Joseph Kissel monitored pressure gauges, electrical indicators, and fuel flow. The Seabee H-1 held 290 gallons of thickened napalm mixture. The ignition system, his design, used a waterproof rotating cylinder packed with match cartridges, firing reliably even under salt spray and dust. At 150 yards, Japanese bullets struck the hull, pinging sharply against steel armor. The tank did not slow. At 100 yards, the driver pivoted the hull. Through the periscope, Kissel saw the bunker's firing slit. The Type 92 machine gun barrel protruded slightly, still searching for targets. Kissel aligned the nozzle. He squeezed the trigger. A spark ignited. Pressurized fuel blasted forward. A roaring arc of flame erupted from the Sherman's gun mount, crossing 400 feet in seconds. Burning napalm slammed into the bunker and poured inside. Through the firing slit, smoke burst from every opening. The machine gun fell silent. 5 seconds. That was all it took. What 2 days of infantry assaults and 15 casualties could not accomplish was achieved almost instantly. Marines watched in disbelief as the Sherman reversed, leaving behind a burning concrete tomb. Word spread immediately. Platoon leaders radioed requests. Flame tanks were needed everywhere. That afternoon, 3 more Zippos entered combat. Pillboxes collapsed. Cave entrances became furnaces. Japanese defenders fled or burned. Not a single Marine died during those assaults. By nightfall, commanders demanded flame tanks for every major operation. But there were only 8. Kissel and Patterson worked through the night, inspecting wiring, refilling fuel, replacing ignition cartridges. They knew the next day would be worse. On February 22nd, Japanese forces responded. Mortar fire targeted refueling areas. Snipers aimed for technicians. Still, the flame tanks kept moving. By noon, divisions reported dozens of fortifications destroyed. Casualties dropped dramatically. Marines advanced faster, waiting for flame support rather than rushing into death traps. On February 23rd, Kissel rode with a tank sent to support the 23rd Marines, pinned down by interconnected caves. 3 5-second bursts turned the entire complex into an inferno. Secondary explosions rocked the hillside. The position fell in 11 minutes. That night, demand exceeded supply. Requests stacked up faster than tanks could respond. The weapon worked. The problem was numbers. Japanese commanders quickly adapted. Orders flowed through tunnel networks. Destroy the flame tanks first. Mortars bracketed refueling sites. Anti-tank guns waited for Zippos to appear. Despite constant repairs, all 8 tanks remained operational. Kissel worked 18-hour days, rewiring corroded circuits, clearing clogged pumps, fabricating parts from wrecked Shermans. On February 27th, a flame tank took a direct hit from a 47mm anti-tank gun. The round deflected, but the impact hurled Kissel inside the hull. His shoulder dislocated. Patterson reset it manually. 2 hours later, Kissel was back at work. By early March, flame tanks had transformed Marine tactics. Infantry advanced behind them, using armor as mobile cover. Tunnel systems fell in days instead of weeks. Casualties in flame-supported sectors dropped 42%. Then came the meat grinder, Hill 362. Turkey Knob and the amphitheater, 9 days, 800 casualties. No progress. 4 flame tanks advanced together on March 3rd. At 100 yards, all fired simultaneously. 1,600 feet of flame swept the hills. In 12 minutes, positions that had cost hundreds of lives were neutralized. Marine commanders estimated 500 lives saved in that sector alone. But the tanks were wearing down. Pumps failed, wiring corroded. Exhaustion took its toll. Still, they kept moving. By the morning of February 22, 1945, Japanese commanders on Iwo Jima had reached a dangerous conclusion. The most lethal weapon on the battlefield was no longer Marine infantry, artillery, or naval gunfire. It was the 8 Sherman flame tanks. Orders moved rapidly through the underground tunnel networks. The instruction was clear and uncompromising. Destroy the flame tanks first. Kill their crews. Stop them at any cost. Forward observers began identifying refueling points and maintenance areas. As daylight broke, Japanese mortars started falling with increasing accuracy. They were learning. They were adapting. Joseph Kissel and shipfitter First Class J.T. Patterson worked constantly, moving from tank to tank under fire. Volcanic dust crept into every electrical connection. The rough terrain shook wiring loose, fuel pumps clogged with sediment from the thickened napalm mixture. Every mission meant new problems. Every failure risked Marine lives. Despite this, results were undeniable. 4th and 5th Marine Divisions reported dramatic breakthroughs. Positions that had resisted for days collapsed in minutes once flame tanks arrived. Infantry advances accelerated. Casualties dropped sharply. On February 23rd, the 23rd Marines were pinned down by a complex of interconnected caves. 6 hours of fighting had achieved nothing. 12 Marines were already casualties. Artillery had failed. Infantry assaults had failed. A flame tank was requested. Kissel rode in the assistant driver's seat. At 75 yards, the gunner fired the first burst. 5 seconds of flame engulfed the main cave entrance. The turret shifted. Another 5-second burst. Then a third. The caves became furnaces. Ammunition inside detonated from the heat. Smoke poured from every opening. The entire complex was neutralized in 11 minutes. The company commander radioed battalion headquarters with a simple request: send more flame tanks. There were none to send. By February 27th, the flame tanks had been in continuous combat for 4 days. Each tank ran 4 to 6 missions daily. Kissel worked 18-hour shifts. That day, a Sherman took a direct hit from a Japanese Type 1 47mm anti-tank gun. The armor deflected the round, but the impact hurled Kissel violently inside the hull. His shoulder dislocated. Patterson reset it by hand. 2 hours later, Kissel was back inside another tank, repairing wiring. Marine commanders took note, not just of the weapon's power, but its reliability. Volcanic ash jammed machine guns. Salt air destroyed radios. The flame tanks kept working. On March 3rd, the Marines attacked the sector known as the Meat Grinder, Hill 362, Turkey Knob, and the amphitheater. 9 days of fighting had cost over 800 casualties with almost no progress. 4 flame tanks advanced together. At 100 yards, all 4 fired simultaneously. 1,600 feet of flame engulfed the hillside. In 12 minutes, positions that had killed Marines for 9 days were destroyed. 5th Marine Division later estimated that 500 Marine lives were saved in that sector alone. On the night of March 7th, Japanese forces launched a rare and coordinated counterattack. 300 soldiers emerged from tunnel systems and struck Marine positions near Kitano Point. Night tank operations were extremely dangerous, but Marine commanders knew the alternative would be worse. 2 flame tanks were sent forward. Inside one of them, Joseph Kissel monitored pressure gauges by flashlight. Japanese infantry attacked the tank directly. A satchel charge struck the turret but failed to detonate. At 150 yards, the gunner fired. The night turned into daylight as a massive stream of flame swept across the hillside. The counterattack collapsed within minutes. By morning, Marines counted 187 Japanese dead. Marine casualties were 23. The victory came at a cost. Electrical failures increased. Fuel pumps began failing completely. By March 10th, only 6 flame tanks remained fully operational. Napalm shortages forced mission limits. On March 11th, Patterson collapsed from dehydration and was ordered to rest. That left Kissel alone, maintaining all remaining flame tanks. His hands were cut and bleeding. His uniform was soaked with sweat and fuel. His injured shoulder throbbed constantly. He did not stop. Reinforcements arrived on March 12th. Spare parts and trained technicians from Schofield Barracks. The flame tank operations could finally continue at full strength. The final weeks of the battle were relentless. Every ridge, every cave, every tunnel required destruction. The flame tanks worked continuously. By March 20th, over 240 combat missions, more than 370 fortified positions destroyed, 40,000 gallons of napalm consumed, 0 flame tanks lost. Portable flamethrower units had suffered casualty rates as high as 92%. Flame tank crews suffered roughly 12%. On March 26, 1945, Admiral Chester Nimitz declared Iwo Jima secure. Marine Corps assessments were unanimous. The flame tank was the most valuable single weapon used on the island. Infantry officers said they would rather have 1 flamethrower tank than a dozen standard tanks. The weapon did more than win a battle. It changed doctrine. At Okinawa, 54 flame tanks, all based on Kissel's Seabee H-1 design, entered service. Variants of the system remained in use through the Korean War. Joseph Kissel returned home quietly. No fame, no parade, but thousands of Marines went home alive because of the weapon he built, maintained, and fought inside. A 24-year-old electrician changed the mathematics of war, and history remembers the fire that saved lives.